So we first talk about, I'll talk about business, I'll talk about the management, the financials, and the valuation. Okay, so let me go to the business first. Yeah, what is Microsoft business? And in it, we look at these two things. Growth. What is the growth of this whole industry? Right. So Microsoft is largely in the software industry and the cloud industry. So we look at these two industries, and we look at Microsoft dominance, and their market share trend. This will talk about the growth of Microsoft. We'll talk about the resilience as well. Resilience, we talk about competitive strength, how recurrent are their revenue, and the diversification of their earnings stream. I give an analogy like a soccer game. Okay, so we have growth is talking about a team that can be scoring a lot of goals. That means in business-wise, they're actually encroaching on other people's turf, to take away market share from them. However, a team that can just score goals won't win the championship. They still need to defend well, have great goalkeepers and defenders. And that's called resilience. So they must also be able to stop people from coming onto their turf as they are going out there, to conquer more turf. Okay, so this to put growth and resilience in the analogy of a soccer team. Let's look at Microsoft business segments. Okay, the three big ones. Actually Microsoft Office, I guess everybody has used it before. The Excel, the PowerPoints, and their Windows operating system. So this is really where Microsoft was born, under Bill Gates' time. Okay, so under the new CEO, Satya Nadella, because they've been growing the cloud business, the Microsoft Azure. So these three big, I'll say, chunk of their revenue makes up about 70% of Microsoft's total revenue. Okay, the rest includes like gaming, which is Xbox, the search ads, which is like a Bing. Okay, and then it's actually also own LinkedIn. Okay, so you can take a look. This largely sums up Microsoft's business. Okay, so Microsoft has been having a shift since the new CEO came on board, Satya Nadella. So when Satya Nadella, he didn't want to just continue the legacy, which is Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Office, but rather he wanted to move Microsoft into the cloud space, to move from a software, licensing of software, to a software subscription. So that is where Microsoft 365 is coming in. Of course, with the cloud, it's not just about Microsoft 365. It's about moving things out of companies' premises. Okay, let me just share with you what is cloud. Okay, for those maybe who are not so don't really understand, I've not heard of what is cloud. Okay, cloud is basically about moving data applications away from the premise. Because in the past, the companies used to have their own server at their own premises to be housing data, and then they need to buy their own software, the operating software, the application software. Everything is housed within the premise. With the cloud, there are three types. Okay, progressively, more and more of the applications and data are moved out of the premise. First, we have infrastructure as a service. Now, with this, things like storage of data, the servers, it's actually moved to a third party. We call it the cloud provider. Okay, however, things like application software or the data still housed within the premise itself. Okay, then we go to platform as a service. When we move to here, operating system is then moved off sites. Okay, and when we move to software as a service, almost nothing is housed within the premise. Okay, everything is run by the cloud provider. Okay, so there's a different spectrum to cloud. But it's basically about moving things from on-premise to off-premise. That's cloud. Okay, so first, let's look at the growth of the cloud industry. Is it an attractive industry to be in? Because all companies exist within an industry. For example, the Singapore Airline exists within the airline industry. Singtel exists within the telecommunication industry. So Microsoft exists within the software and the cloud industry. So I've looked at a few research Yeah, and generally, cloud industry is forecast to grow in the mid-teens. Yeah, all the way until about 2025, yeah, which is about 5 years down the road, mid-teens, about 15%. And as an industry, actually that's a very attractive growth rate. Yeah, because for good companies, a lot of times the bottom line, which is a profit, grows at a faster rate than their top line, which is their revenue. So if the revenue can grow at 15%, that could be a good chance the profit per share could be growing faster than that. So 15% on the industry level is actually a very attractive rate of growth. Next, look at Microsoft within the cloud. So if you look at this, the number one player in the cloud space is Amazon. Yeah. And number two is actually Microsoft. But if you look at the rate of growth, actually Microsoft has been taking market share. It's been growing the fastest for the past 3 years. Yeah. So if you look at the four major players, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Alibaba, I think Microsoft has been growing the fastest. And another good thing is that we like industries that are consolidated. That means we don't have many players. You only have a few big players. So that's not as competitive. Yeah. And hence, this is also what we like, where the smaller players are actually declining. The one that's a dotted gray line. Yeah. So it's more and more dominated by these four companies globally. So now, we talk about the growth, of Microsoft. But how about the resilience? So the resilience first, we talk about the competitive advantages. Okay, so usually there are these four types of competitive advantage. I just quickly go through them. Okay, cost advantage means you can produce something at the lower cost than a competitor. Yeah, this allows the company to sell at a cheaper price, which make it more competitive, more attractive to the consumer. Okay, I'll skip on the efficient scale. Yeah. We talk about switching costs. Okay, switching costs is to do with habits. Yeah, because people tend not to want to learn new things, unlearn and relearn. Yeah. For example, prior to this COVID-19, I was quite lazy to learn about all these Zoom, Microsoft Teams. Yeah, but now with this COVID, I've got no choice. I have to learn. So that's a switching cost. Yeah, if nothing pushes me to learn, I will likely just stay within my comfort zone. And that's human being. Network effect is about when you have more buyers, it will actually make the system more attractive. You'll attract more sellers. And the more sellers will then attract more buyers. It goes in a virtuous cycle. Okay, so I think at this point, I want to guess, what do you think are Microsoft's competitive advantages? Okay, intangible assets basically talk about brands, patents, which makes them, makes competitors difficult to compete with them. Yeah, you can just type it in the message. Yeah, if you like to just share, what do you think? Yeah, so Kelvin is talking about switching costs. Yeah, that is the main competitive advantage. Yeah, what else? Intangible assets, switching costs. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, maybe I'll unveil. I think the two main ones, network effect and switching costs. Okay, switching costs because I think it's been known for a long time. Microsoft's Office is not the best. So a lot of bugs, not the best. However, how many of us here do not use Microsoft Office, the Excel, the PowerPoint? I can confidently say, without doing any survey, it's going to be extremely low, maybe even nobody. Everybody are using Microsoft Office. Yeah. Why? Because once you start using it, it's very hard to, you don't really want to unlearn it and relearn something else. Okay? And the network effect. Network effect means, if you look at a lot of other applications, say on Bloomberg, if you want to download something, you need to have Microsoft Office on the laptop. Otherwise, you can't download it because it works hand in hand. Yeah. So I'll say the more applications out there that uses Microsoft Office, will make Microsoft Office more harder to more sticky. And the more people who have Microsoft Office will attract more developers, applications to be using Microsoft Office as a platform. Yeah, because of that, it creates a virtuous cycle. It makes it very hard to break away from. Of course, others like intangible assets, there's definitely a part of it. But I'll say these two are the main ones in my view. Okay, then the other part about how resilient is talking about how recurring the revenues are. Because if the revenues are very recurring, it's like paying our handphone bills, right? Yeah, we always pay without us knowing that we are paying. Yeah, it just goes through our gyro. Yeah, so recurring revenue, especially in times like that, yeah, actually often is the savior. Yeah, because people are continuing paying it out of habit. Yeah, and today's Microsoft revenue, 2/3 of it are recurring, coming from a subscription model, which are inherently much more sticky. So I think this as well is actually contributing to Microsoft's resilience in times like that. Okay, next I'd like to ask a question. Okay, these are the revenue streams of the big 5 tech companies. Okay, the Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. Let's talk about Microsoft. What do you observe about Microsoft among these 5? Anything that you observe, you can just type it again in a message. Okay, Vignesh said very diversified. Mr. Asad said diversified. Yeah. Thanks, and I agree with you, and that's my answer as well. Yeah. Compared to some of the big tech players, yeah, it's a lot more diversified. I mean, Facebook, 97% of their revenue relies on advertisements. Yeah, and hence if something hits the advertisement revenue, yeah, like recently, right, like Unilever wanted to boycott, and hence it could be affected badly. But Microsoft, by the virtue of its diversification, yeah, is more protected. Yeah, something could happen to its Xbox, yeah, but it only affects 11% to the revenue, for example. Okay, so I think that again helps to protect and create resilience for Microsoft revenue and profits.